Welcome back. The political situation in Honduras seems no closer to resolution 1 month after a coup which sent President Manuel Zelaya into exile. Talks mediated by the Costa Rican President Oscar Arias, aimed at restoring constitutional order to Honduras, are in a deadlock, and the United States is backing Mr. Arias' efforts to negotiate Mr. Zelaya's return, something that the de facto leader, Roberto Micheletti, has so far rejected. I'm joined by Roberto Flores Bermudez, Honduras' former ambassador to the United States, who stepped down from his position after the coup. Ambassador Bermudez argues the ousted president tried to subvert the constitution. Let's get back to our discussion and just touch on this issue of the OAS's decision to suspend Honduras. In terms of the achievement, you were saying it's a decision, I mean, it's effectively, it's not a decision so much for the US, but it was...
That's right, I misheard. It's about the OAS, the Organization of American States. The decision, again, does not play into the way to solve a problem like this, and why not? Basically, because by isolating a country from the organization and by impeding contact with its government, you don't have the communications open. You cannot send a fact-finding mission, which the OAS should. Also, you have the implication of having a decision in place with no outlet, no way out, and that's not really the way to solve the problem. So isolating Honduras by suspending its membership within the OAS is not really the way to go. One would have expected from the Secretariat General to be able to undertake a diplomatic effort to try to achieve a better solution to the situation.
Again, I wonder, considering how it happened all very quickly, whether that's something that might have been reviewed had more information been out. But let's get a call in from Pakistan. Faz on the line. Faz, what would you like to ask?
Yes, how you doing, Riz? Nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
All right, and my question to your guest is the president of Honduras, is he going to take every measure to get into the country? And what about the current government there? What are their plans with the U.S. Government that they have, the bases, military bases in Honduras? So how will U.S. react to the current situation, behind the doors? Because they do not speak the reality on the televisions and
Faz, let's get a perspective then. Really, what's going on behind closed doors, do you think?
Well, there is a statement made by the government of President Micheletti in the sense that if under the actual circumstances, without this peace negotiation culminated, what would happen if Mr. Zelaya returns to the country? Well, the warrant for his arrest is there. It would be carried out and he would be detained. Therefore, the more there is a need to be able to talk things out, to have the mediator, Mr. Oscar Arias, do his job, get the people together and try to reach a common ground.
Diello in South Africa. Good you could join us. What would you like to ask?
Hello.
Hi, go on.
Hello, my name is Diallo from South Africa.
Please go ahead.
My question is to say to this gentleman, it is what he's saying about the Constitution. If this president wants to change the Constitution, I think the army have right to overthrow this guy. Because we in Africa, we have the same problem. It's the example of Niger. The Constitution is like an agreement. If we can't just sit in every 2-3 years voting a new Constitution. Why changing the Constitution? I think the army have right, because we have the same problem in Niger, we have the same problem in Africa, all over.
Okay, Diallo, thank you. Let me put that also with a question we got from Facebook, Ambassador, from Fahmia Al-Foti, who wrote in saying, how many ousted presidents are able to regain their power? Will he be able to do it with the support of the US and the international community? I mean, what do you expect to be the outcome from the current international pressure?
I would expect that there would be a common ground reached through the negotiations. In what terms? This is the most difficult part, and one cannot really venture to speculate on this. But there has been a lot of political will that has been shown by President Micheletti saying, well, this process with President Arias in Costa Rica is open. We are not closing this up. We're undertaking consultations within our own government. Well, he would expect that Mr. Zelaya do the same, instead of saying, well, this is over and done with, I do not accept any more mediations, and I will go back to the country by force. This is an act that will not play well into a proper solution to the situation.
It's complicated when there are people on the international circuit adding to this, and I want to mention how U.S. Congressman Raul Grijalva, a Democrat from Arizona, has circulated a letter, a strong letter condemning those who ousted Mr. Zelaya. Just to read you an excerpt, sir. He says, "The regime has been intimidating and closing down media outlets opposing the coup, shooting journalists, opening fire on unarmed protesters, killing at least one 19-year-old, Isis Murillo, beating and jailing marchers and political leaders, and generally violating civil liberties." He goes on to say, "In response to the worsening situation, I feel that President Obama should follow up on his comments rejecting the coup and denounce the repression carried out by this illegitimate regime." So when you have this kind of strong letter from a U.S. politician, obviously who has some clout, how can you respond to those comments, and what do you suggest?
Well, first of all, it's an opinion that is highly respected, and every member of Congress has every right to have his own opinion. What I would say on a situation like this is it's really important to have the facts, because if you have partial information, if there has not been a chance for the people in Tegucigalpa, for the government in Tegucigalpa to express itself, if immediately it's banned from the international community and there's not a chance to be able to say what happened, and one does act only upon a first impression of those initial images of Mr. Zelaya in Costa Rica and the conditions that we all know about, well, then it's easy to jump to conclusions. I would say gather more facts to be able to really look at the whole picture.
It's interesting, in an article in the Wall Street Journal, Mr. Micheletti, who's now sitting in as president, lists a number of issues justifying the move to oust Mr. Zelaya, including accusations of Mr. Zelaya and his chief of staff illegally withdrawing millions of dollars in cash from the Central Bank of Honduras just days before his arrest. Well, I mean, that's kind of an unusual step. What do you believe was the motive behind that?
Well, I really don't know, and I'm sure that there's a legal process on this. We will really learn about all of the details. But the accusation is a very serious accusation, and accountability should be in place.
Now, in terms of Mr. Arias, Oscar Arias' efforts, he's called for a moratorium on prosecutions for now. Do you feel that there is enough support within the Supreme Court, which was pretty unanimous in its decision against Mr. Zelaya? Do you think there's enough will to accept that approach?
Well, I think that I would qualify my answer in the following way. The Supreme Court hopefully will take a look at all of the process that's in place, of all of the proposal of President Zelaya, because you need the whole picture. You need to know all of the elements at play. If you just decide on amnesty itself, then that's a problem, because legally it should not happen. But it has a political context, and that has to be understood. So hopefully, taking a closer look at that outcome of what the peace process in Costa Rica means for the country in its future, I'm sure they will take the right decision. It's
interesting, as we said in the opening of the show, this is the worst situation in Latin America for about 20 years in terms of a coup. And it's brought together sort of those who are largely opposed to each other, such as the USA and Venezuela, as allies with a common goal. Where does Hugo Chavez fit in all of this?
Well, that's a key question, and we've seen all over the newspapers a lot of comments concerning the presence of Venezuela. We must recall that President Zelaya, back in August of last year, began a closer relationship with Venezuela through what is called the ALBA Group, basically with the purpose of obtaining additional resources of cooperation to benefit the social development of Honduras. But this began to escalate and get more complicated until we saw the participation of Venezuela even in making the boxes and printing the ballots for the referendum in Honduras. So that level of involvement really is something that the Honduran people reject.
How much division is there within the Honduran society on the result of this coup? I mean, to what extent is the public divided?
Well, Riz, I think that's a key question. I won't talk about percentages right now, but just let me tell you that all of the democratic institutional framework, Congress, the judicial branch, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, the Attorney General, the public prosecutor, all of these institutions, the Catholic Church, the evangelical churches, many members of civil society, the NGOs, are all in favor of the change that has taken place. Everybody was rejecting what President Zelaya was attempting to do, to reform the Constitution and try to perpetuate himself in power. So this rejection has been massive. There has been demonstrations of hundreds and thousands of people on the streets wearing the white of peace, to show that they are in support of this change and that the return of Zelaya is something that people fear. They fear because it brings uncertainty, it brings violence. We see what's happening in the boundary with Nicaragua. There's a lot of talk about force. The people of Honduras don't want that.
Let's squeeze in a call from Switzerland. Gonzalo is on the line. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I think Mr. Bermudez is part and parcel of the people that did the coup. And I think he defends what most Latin Americans, thanks God, we have been able to get rid of, military coups in Latin America. And I think he goes around the bend trying to defend what I think it's part of the past.
Okay, let me put this to the ambassador. We have about 30 seconds to answer that. This has been portrayed as a military coup to many.
Well, since my position has been called for right now, I would like to say that under no circumstances could I favor a coup d'etat in my country or anywhere in the world. I think the utmost respect for the Constitution and for the will of the people must be obeyed.
Okay. Ambassador, I thank you very much for taking part in this discussion. Of course, the story's not over. I hope we have a chance to speak again.
Look forward to it, Riz. Thank you so much.
And thank you for being with us with your questions. Now, on the next show, the UN Arab Development Report. Over 100 independent intellectuals and scholars from the region conclude that progress is being hindered by a lack of individual security, among other things. Of course, we welcome your views on the topic. Send in your questions. Remember, you can follow me on Facebook. We're constantly updating content on the page. So log in and take a look, and please do send us a question. For now, from me and the team, we'll see you next time.